Okay, hello. I'm at a talk right now. There's actually people in front of me, a bunch of fantastic moms, and we're going to be talking about being your own superhero or becoming your own superhero. Okay, so hi, my name is Sarah Siegel. Thank you, Nahama, for asking me to come speak. It's a really, truly an honor and a privilege to be speaking to anybody in general. And thanks, Anaya, because you hooked it up good. Talking about alternative. Thank you for your introduction with this and the Rebbe talking about alternative healing. And it actually reminded me of a story that I have a friend in Israel who also does alternative healing. She does acupuncture. I don't know if you know her, Esther Adasa. Anybody know her? Yeah. So it was really cool. We did a joint for Brangen on the most favorite thing to talk about, which is healing. And so she told this story about this man, and I'm not going to get all the details right, but this is the gist of it, that there was a man in front of 770, as is before Gimel Tammuz, obviously. Well, it'll be obvious in a second. Anyway, and he fell down and he was having some sort of an attack, like something physically happened to him. And then there was another man who came over to him and put his hands on him and was obviously doing some form of energy work on him. And some of the Hasidim really just freaked out. Like, they were like, oh my gosh, they ran to the Rebbe's room. They're like, what's going on here? He's doing a Avodah Zarah. Like, you can't, this is like, they were very upset about this. And the Rebbe actually said, like, during the times of Mashiach, people will be healing with their hands. And it's very, very powerful. And it's really, really beautiful. And I'm so honored. I've been healed. I'm still in my heal, I've been healed and I'm in my process for other people's hands and their words. And I really have an honor and a privilege to be working with other people to help them regulate their nervous system. So everything that I do, I'm a client of. I'm a life coach. I'm a quantum touch energy practitioner. And I'm in the middle of a 2.5-year course in studying biodynamic craniosacral therapy, which, like, in and of themselves, each modality is super, super powerful. So what I find the coolest thing is that I get to combine all of them. And I find that to be so effective. And it's really, really amazing. And so when I was thinking about this topic, I was like, what else? Like, we're moms. Like, moms are superheroes, okay? But we forget that we're superheroes. And how does that even happen? I think that happens because we're human and because we have a whole history of generational wars and dysfunction and abuse from all different angles. I mean, I don't know. I have my mom's side of the family is coming from Holocaust survivors. My dad's side of the family, I still have not figured out what went wrong, but something went wrong. Okay, something went very, very wrong. And and I was the recipient of that, and me and my brother, and so were they. So when I was growing up, I had a much different story than what I'm going to tell you today. Okay, my story was I was just full of fear all the time. I grew up in a home, there was a lot of violence. I mean, looking, and my mom was just the sweetest. Like, she tried, but, so there was, like, growing up with, like, a lot of tumultuous feelings because I knew something was wrong. And that's really, really healthy, actually, to, like, know something is really, really off. You know what that I feel like that's what that is. It's like the neshama, just saying, like, something's not right, something's not right. Where I got into a lot of trouble is when I became, argumentative, and then I would get it like 100 times back. So, cause, I'm a little fiery also. And so that's what it is. And I was actually also thinking about, this idea of fantastic moms of at-risk kids. And I was thinking about the part, I was like, yeah, fantastic moms and also of fantastic kids, right? But like that trigger us so that we were in a lot of pain. And then we like have no other choice but to look at ourselves and our own patterns. Otherwise, we continue to suffer, okay? And I listened to a talk today. It was so beautiful. I loved it. It was a definition of compassion is when suffering meets love. And I really, really, really love that because healing is compassion. Actually, isn't it like Mashiach is the time of compassion, right? And mercy, right? It's all about healing. That's all it is about compassion. So it's like, if we want that, right, we have to actually experience that. And then, but then what happens is then we have kids and then they grow up and then they give us like really a lot of opportunities to do that, right? So, okay, so here we go. I'm getting up now. Okay, let's see what happens. So, okay. Okay, so this is what I kind of thinking has been happening, is that as I was talking about, generational trauma has been passed on, okay? So we're born, we're basically in alignment, okay? What I'm learning in the cranial stuff is really like, it's fantastic, right? We're learning about organs and how they move and tracking them. And why are we doing all that? Because really there's an original pattern of movement in all our organs that started off when we were in the embryo, okay? So then what happens is we grow up and then we have to take on some sort of survival skills just to survive our life in any way, okay? So, and that might mean that you had parents that were amazing and cordial and all that stuff, but then something else happened in school, or it doesn't matter. In some way, we all had to cope with something. And most of the time, we're not taught, and neither were the people raising us, is how to work with emotions and how to work with regulating our own nervous systems. So, so what I was talking about with the embryo and the movement is that we're in alignment when we're born. That's why it's always said, oh, babies are so close to God. Why? Well, because they didn't go through life yet. That's why. Okay, so it's like then, and then it's like we come to a point where it's like it becomes really, really painful in our life. And then it's finally time to experience the pain of our life. So that way then we can experience the healing of our life. So we could what? Return back into the place of alignment of where we really need to be. Okay, and it's like a growing, it's a growing challenge. Like it doesn't happen overnight. Like we're still in process. Like we're always in process actually. And so I was like, I took some notes on becoming your own superhero because I just wanted to share a couple of things that, okay. So a few points, bullet points that I made, like on your flyer, was differentiating facts from stories. So there's always going to be a circumstance that we have in our life, and it's going to be factual, right? So, for example, okay, the story with my dad, right? So so let's say, he slammed a door. That's okay. So the thing is in our thoughts, as children, I don't know how to comprehend what just happened. Okay, so then I have to make up a story, and that story is going to be most likely based on it's going to be survival for me, right? So it's going to be like, he's angry and I'm scared. So he's angry makes me feel scared, okay? And the scared is going to move me into how I act, okay? So basically, then what ends up happening is that with our own, as we grow up, we have these stories that we have in our own heads, and we have all of these patterns of survival in our own heads. And I just want to say that I'm a little nervous right now, and I love that. And the thing is, the biggest thing I think today is like just to be able to regulate ourselves while we're going through things that our brain is perceiving as scary. You ladies are the kindest, nicest people, and I believe all the people out there listening, like there's nothing happening here that is scary. But my brain is telling me there's something here that's scary. There's something here that's bigger than me. And that's usually what happens in our life, is that we're just scared of situations because we've had circumstances in the past that have modeled that for us, that we're not safe. Because as children, we don't have the skills to emotionally regulate. One of the definitions of trauma is that we have an experience happen that is bigger than us. So it's like we have an experience, let's say we're in second grade, and then we have experience that is in high school. So for example, we're in second grade, and then the teacher gives us calculus. There is no way a second grader is able to comprehend calculus. That's the same exact thing as trauma. It's the same exact thing as having dysregulated parents. It's the same exact thing as having a dysregulated spouse or children that are dysregulated, okay? So basically what we do is we revert into the same survival skills that we use to survive our own family. And then when we have these kids, we're like projecting even before they're born. Okay. So I don't know about you, but I went to every single parenting class that I could find. And that's because I didn't want what happened with me in my life to repeat itself in my children's lives. The thing that is missing from that is that we can't fix other people. Like, first of all, it's understanding that we're actually not broken. Like, this is actually we're like on some sort of like living continuum here of life, where we're going to have a lot of experiences that are going to be really painful. And we're going to have also a lot of experiences that are going to be really, really awesome, right? There's going to be a lot of circumstances that trigger negative feelings. There's going to be a lot of circumstances that trigger a lot of positive feelings. So that being said, it's what our natural tendency to do is try to prevent things from happening, is trying to prevent our kids from experiencing things that is just part of their life, or and also so we want to kind of like fix things before it's a problem. We want to fix things while they're a problem. But the only real way that we get to do that is if we turn around and just look at ourselves, because that's really where all of our healing power is in becoming our own superhero. Because in that way, then we model the behavior of what it looks like to become your own superhero to your children and to everybody else. So, and also, I hope you don't mind. Okay.
Now she's really feeling comfortable.
Yeah, you're really comfortable.
Now you can just sit on the chair.
No. There's something about scary. Yeah, and there's something about being perfect also. This is so good, okay? Okay. So anyway, and you know what else? Like, just to like get in our bodies, you know, like that's actually the last place we want to be, because actually when we're experiencing stuff that's like too big for us as adults, as children, however it is, we are out of our bodies. Like, we get scared to be in our own bodies. That's what trauma is. And the body holds the memories of the feelings, right? So that's why I'm so scared right now, right? Because I don't know what's going to happen, right? I mean, I'm actually not so scared right now, and also I took off my shoes, so it's all good. But anyway, but on the way over here, it's funny, like I'm like watching my brain, and there's a couple parts of our brain. Like, there's a part of us, there's an internal voice, right? You know that one. That's a very quiet voice. That's our intuition. And then there's the part of our heads that is the screaming voice. That's the part of our brain that's the survival brain. Okay, and the survival brain wants to conserve energy, avoid pain, and seek pleasure. That's like really its only job, okay? And basically going through life in a successful way to heal like your life and to have a better life experience, we have to expand energy, we have to use our energy, we have to be willing to experience pain, and we also have to look at things more in the long term instead of seeking immediate pleasure, right? Sometimes immediate pleasure is just, sometimes we'll just yell, right? So it'll just get taken care of. But then that's not a long-term plan. Sometimes we have to experience the pain of just sitting there and feeling really, really uncomfortable just to regulate ourselves, so that way we could kind of respond in a way that we want to respond and how we want to show up. Okay, so, all right. Oh, and so what I want to say is that, so we kind of get disconnected from our own bodies and we go right into our head, because that's our survival brain. And our brain is really there to protect, like it wants us to survive. When I'm walking to come to something and to do it, like I will feel the same way as if like the hormones go, right? Like the cortisol, the stress hormones get kicked in. So, and that'll happen even if my daughter, like if she forgets something, like if she loses something, and this has happened, actual example, right? She lost something. And so, but my head will automatically go into, oh my gosh, like, and then all of a sudden there's this whole story of how now everything is a mess and how everything is messy. So if you've ever done something like that, it's because our brains are not realizing we're not actually getting attacked by a bear. Like, your kid's life is not just because something, they lost something. But we don't realize that because our brains don't realize that you're not in an emergency sometimes. It actually feels like you are in an emergency, but you're not in an emergency.
That's how
So
they feel when they're little and they
Yeah.
lose like their doll, and it's like I'm saying that's how they
Exactly.
feel, and then we start acting like them. Like
yeah, that's exactly
it's-
right. That's exactly what happens. That's exactly what happens. And so that's the thing. That's why they mirror back to us where we need our own healing, because once we start acting like them, that's like where we know that's like our emotional maturity level that like has to grow a little bit. Like, because then otherwise we're beating them at the same age that they are. And it's like we have to become our own superhero, like while they're going through their dysregulation. And for them, it is life or death. Like they don't know how they're going to get through it. So
Isn't it also like we have to teach them how to regulate?
yeah, we have to teach them how to regulate. So this is the thing, and this is kind of what's my point before. The thing is we think that if we talk and we say words, that is going to teach them how to regulate themselves. Not really, unless we are regulated when we say those words. Okay, so that's that. I kind of feel I just want to tell you a little bit about I guess just a little bit about just a little bit about my experience in life. So basically, I told you it was a little bit of a tumultuous upbringing, and then like later when I was in college, I basically didn't have, like, everything was a mess and relationships were a mess, all that stuff. And then so I asked God if he was real, huge miracles, and I am brought here, I learn here. And so it's like basically kind of pouring, which it really, really helped me, pouring, like a lot of what we learn here is amazing. Like it's literally spoke to my soul and helped to align me back to myself. Like there is no question about that. What I was told would happen in the Hasidic home, or like whatever was like promised, which it wasn't promised. It was my head that was hearing, this is promised to you. Like, this is what a marriage is going to look like. This is what your kids are going to look like. This is what it's going to look like when you send them to school. Like these are the premises, and there's nothing wrong. That's amazing. And, and that's all possible and true and everything. The thing is, when we're coming to it, I was coming to it with my own past programming. Okay. That was not looked at yet. So, so then I was set up with the actual perfect person for me that would make it the perfect storm, and for me to actually dig in and eventually like dig in and make it a hard enough situation for my life that I needed to actually dig in and just say, you know what, God, whatever it's going to take, I just want to become a force of healing in this world. So I have these two gorgeous girls, and due to different mental issues and addiction issues, so we divorced, and he took his own life a year after we divorced. And that was the time when I dug my heels in, and that's when I said, I was like, that's it, God, I don't care what it takes. Like, I just don't care. I don't care what it takes. So I had to go through a very rigorous healing for myself. I had to be willing to experience such a level of pain that was my life and my own patterns. And what also happened is after
I'm sorry, you're talking in cold words. I have no idea.
Good. Ask me what.
What does it mean? Experience my own pain. You were living your life. Like what?
Yeah,
what?
my life is, but just being myself was painful.
Okay, but how was that healing? Like, how is that different than what we're doing without the healing process? Like, we're living our lives and experiencing whatever pain we're doing.
Yeah.
How is that healing journey?
Yeah. Okay, good. So
I just got lost.
Okay, fine. So just get it that, like, I'm just telling you a little bit about my life here, and then basically, that was my prayer, right? And then I had to, okay, I understand what you're saying. That's a really good question. Now I'm going to answer your question. Okay, so basically, what does that mean? It means that I had to take my own inventory. I had to recognize that it had nothing to do with my spouse. It had nothing to do with the other people in my life. I mean, at the end of the day, when I was with my kids, the way that I was acting was extremely painful, because when I was under any amount of stress, I would react in rage. Like I would react in anger, and that was what I was taught. That's what I received, and that is the last thing that I ever wanted to do. And I had no power not to do that. The reason why I'm saying I had no power to not to do that is because my brain was completely on default. And if I could have done better, I would have. Okay, so this is where I kind of love the idea of Bechira, because only when I actually was able to look at myself and my own patterns and to own my own anger, to own my own feelings, to own how I'm irresponsible, how I'm actually not in integrity with myself, how I'm the one who's causing more of the problems than I'm solving. Okay, when I was willing to look at how I'm being manipulative, how I'm being in dependency, like until I was willing to own all of my stuff. Yeah, all of my stuff that I didn't want to look at because it was all because of him, right? It's all, and before I was married, it was all my parents' fault. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, it's basically, we project until we're willing to at some point turn around the mirror. And I love this analogy. Somebody said, we're going to a mirror with a frowny face, expecting a smiling face. Okay? So basically what I had to become was that smiley face, so that way I could look in the mirror and see a smiling face. Does that make sense?
And I just say the smiling
Okay,
face.
exactly. And it's real. It's not something that I'm trying to do, because there was a long time where I'm like, getting so frustrated, like, oh, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? You know how annoying it is? Like when I even think about, like, I'm not like proud of that, but it's like, I also want to talk about that struggle for me, because I know that there's women and there's mothers out there who do struggle with a lot of rage, and then they feel terrible about it. But the deal is nobody was able to help me with that. Actually, I'll tell you what ended up happening. There was no program, there was no therapist, there was nothing that was able to help me with the rage. Until about 7.5 years into my healing journey, where a lot of things helped me. There was a lot of help. I actually was a recipient of craniosacral therapy. That was super, super helpful. Why? Because it helps to regulate your body and your nervous system while you're going through the emotional changes. So, I want to say something about that, but just try to stay focused. Okay, so, all right, that's coming in. So anyway, so basically I also remembered that after I got divorced, I basically was like, with money, I was like, this is the most important thing. I said, I have to make sure that I have rent. I have to make sure that I have food on the table, and then it's my mental health. And, till today, and it's going to be exciting to see how that changes. I'm in a 650 square apartment, which is amazing, because I got so smart living in Brooklyn and how to use space. Like, just, you have a problem with your fridge, let me know. I'll tell you exactly how to pack it. We do loft beds, we do desks underneath, we do all the things. We just figure that out, because I've invested probably over the last 10 years, and it's like, not saying you guys have to do this, but this is what I had to, this is what I did. But I've calculated it, just thinking about it, over 100,000 at this point. It might be even 150,000 into my own recovery, into my own personal growth, into my own regulation. And I'm the best investment that I have, because it pays back so many folds, because my kids are the ones who end up seeing my healing process. Okay, they see it, and I own it, and it's really, really powerful when we understand that we're not perfect. We're not going to be perfect. Okay, I work with a lot of moms and dads, work with some dads, and the thing is about this is one of the things, a couple of thoughts that I was thinking about that moms have is oh, but I don't want to be a bad mom, and I also don't want my kids to experience pain. Okay, that's two things, or I am a bad mom. And the reason why we don't have boundaries, or the reason why we're not doing certain things for ourselves, is I'm a bad mom. And I just wanted to give a couple of thoughts on that. Is, first of all, is that what was the first one? I'm a bad. Okay, so that's just a thought. I'm a bad mom is just a thought. Okay, and the reason why we know that is because it's not quantifiable. Okay, there's not a shot or an injection or something, a blood test that we could take and bring it to a lab, and it could come back bad mom, good mom. That's just not. That's not how it works. So really, our thoughts about ourselves is what makes us a good mom or a not a good mom. It has nothing to do. Okay. Like I was a really good mom. Could have been raging sometimes and I was a bit of a lunatic, but I was also a really good mom doing the best that I could do at that time. Okay. And now I'm a really, really good mom that has tons of tools and is self-regulated, like, and doesn't do that anymore. Oh, so this is what I want to talk about with the rage is because I know that women do that. And I also have had the experience of sharing this and having women come over to me and tell me, you know, I was so judgmental. This is like when I was actually going through it and like I was in groups and stuff and like, they're like, and I was crying about it because I couldn't like stop behaving the way that I was behaving with my kids, like a little bit of stress. And I would just be, I would just be crazy. So anyway, and they were like, oh, I judged, you know, I was sitting there and judging you. And then like I'll come back a couple of years later when I'm on my journey, right? And they come over to me and they're like, wow, I just want you to know, like I was judging you before, but like I'm doing that now to my kid. Okay. And like I'm having a really hard time with that. So the thing is about that, just on that issue is that the way that I allowed God to heal my brain. And I say that because we always like say, oh, it's God's will. It's God. That's true. Okay. At the end of the day, it's God. Okay. But it's also our healing journey is our participation in it. It's not like, oh, and then we have no power. No, we have. Now it's about kind of finding, it's not about an intellectual exercise of experience of having God. Okay. It becomes an experience. Like God wants to be experienced through us. Like, what are we? Who's beating our hearts? I'm not doing it. Who's breathing through me? Like that's God. Like that's Hashem through us. Okay. That's not the big, I'm saying this is all, we're all, if we believe what we say that Hashem Echad, right? Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, that's one. Okay. And we learn in Chassidus that it's he conceals himself, right? So, okay. So that way, why? So that way we could come find him. Where is he located? In the place that we're going to look, the last place in our own hearts. Okay. Now, how do we find that? So we have to, so my experience and my experience of the healing is I was never able to sit in silence. And I actually wasn't even planning on talking about silence, but because I talked about the rage and anger stuff, I just want to talk about a minute about that because I had already gone through like a lot of looking at myself and taking, you know, my own inventory, seeing what was actually, and I just want to say something else also. Once we go through a process of being able to recognize what we've done, even if it's shameful, when we bring light to that, there is nobody else that can shame us because I've already owned it. Like you could tell me like I'm silly or irresponsible or I was mean. And I'm like, oh yeah, I was. Do you know how amazing that is? Like my teenager actually will come over to me and tell me like now I will have conversations with them and it'll be like, you know, this is what you did. You know, you didn't give me lunch on this day. Now I don't remember not doing that. I think I gave them every day. I know that I fed these children. I know they're here. I know I fed them every day, you know, but she'll tell me. And so, but today, because I've owned it and it's like, yeah, that must be really hard. I'm so sorry that you experienced that. That must have been really hard for you. Okay. My first reaction would be to be defensive, but that doesn't work. Us defending ourselves doesn't work. Where we actually have power and where we really have our own superhero-ness is when we really own our own life. And that's a connection. That's with love. The healing happens with love and it happens with the God within, like with our own creator. So I was able to, I learned a really cool trick for meditation. Anybody do any meditation? Really? Yeah. Okay. A little bit guided sometimes. Okay. My head was so crazy. I wasn't able to do any kind of meditations at all. Okay. Because there was too much going on. I couldn't sit for 3 minutes. But when I heard somebody say, sit there and just don't die, I was like, oh, and I had some light bulbs going off and I was like, I could do that. So what ended up happening is that I finally just sat down and I just closed my eyes and I just didn't die. that was what I did. So and I did it for an hour and I did it for an hour a day. And what I accomplished in an hour a day for 30 days doing that, and I'll tell you a few more tools actually that I used with that. accomplished everything that I was trying to accomplish in the previous 7.5 years. Okay. So, but I also needed that to get to where I was, but I'm just saying, like, doing that, the answers are always in the silence, right? The healing is always in the present. So, so also what I also had to do was fall in love with everything that I hated. Okay. I had to fall in love with the fact that I was angry or that I raged. Now, it doesn't mean that it was good or bad. It was just that I had to fall in love with it, because the more I hated myself for how I was acting, the more I would do the more I would go into the actions, because we can't hate ourselves enough and shame ourselves enough and call ourselves enough names to experience healing and a really happy home.
What does it mean to fall in love with the rage?
Okay, thank you. So what it meant for me, you can keep doing this. You call me out and whatever. Like, it's okay. I know I speak different languages. It's okay. So, okay. So we talked about, one of the points that I wanted to talk about was about our own nervous system. I think it was just like making resistance explode, body intelligence. All right, forget it. I don't know. All right, neutralizing the fight or flight response. Okay, that was one thing. So when we neutralize the fight or flight response, it's about being in resistance. When you're in resistance to your life, that thing is the thing that will continue to persist. Okay, there's no way to resist it enough that it's going to get better. We have to somehow get into flow. Okay, but we also don't like what's happening. Okay, so but the two things just don't. We just can't do that to make that happen. So we go into fight or flight, right? And then could be produced into rage or anger. So what does it mean to fall in love with? Okay, this is extreme. I'm kind of extreme with this. So I'll give you the extreme version, what I did, and then I will give you the other version, which is a little bit more neutral, but also super, super helpful. Is I'd be like, I'm raging, or I'm, this is what I'm doing. And I love that. I would just have to add on the caveat of, and I love that. It sounds pretty crazy, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, but what happens is it switches your nervous system into flow instead of resistance.
Are you actually loving it, or you're just saying I love it?
No, I ended up just loving it. Like, sometimes I'll be like, we'll use an easier example. I can't find my phone. Okay, I go into panic, right? I resist the fact that I can't find my phone. Every thought that we have creates an energetic charge in our body, okay? So if you think you're ugly, if you have the thought I'm ugly, you're gonna have a charge in your body, and that's not gonna feel so good. If you have a thought, by the way, this is literally the tools. It's exactly chassidus. It's exactly the tools for actualizing every single thing in chassidus. This is exactly right. And it is switching the thought. So if you're like, if you want to make it more neutral, I'm in a human body. That neutralizes it. Okay? You want to go a little bit to the other level? It's like, I'm really pretty. That feels really good. Okay? So it's about going from that. So a hack that I learned for that was to say, and I love that. Okay? Because what will happen is when you're sitting in silence, everything is going to be brought up. It's like Pesach cleaning, or it's like cleaning a fishbowl. Okay, it's like, it looks fine, but then once you start cleaning, it's a bigger mess than when you started, and it was already
making grocery lists. I don't know. What that look like? I mean, for me, 2 seconds of silence. I have a grocery list to make, or I have a list of things to do. Anybody else different?
Yeah, and I love that for you. So, and you're not different, and everybody. I love that. I'm telling you, sometimes I'll sit there and I'll be like, I'll just want to sit in silence. I'm not. Look, I just want to say a few things. Okay, first of all, in my experience working with people, the best way to do this, and this is actually what I experienced, is that I had to work through a lot of my trauma. Okay, and then I was able to clear out enough, and then I was able to sit in silence a little bit. Okay, no, I know, it's okay, we're good. I love that. We love that. We're in love. Okay, so basically. So what happens when I'm working with people is that basically it's that when we kind of work a little bit together, and then it's just getting okay with things that are happening. So we could just be okay. We're having so much fun. All right. So basically, all right. So with the sitting in silence, So you're basically telling me I'm going to sit in silence and I'm going to have grocery lists and I'm have all this stuff, right?
Your brain's
That's
gonna
right.
think nonstop.
And this is the thing. You're going to have all of those things, right? So either we're going to have all of those things being in a bit of a dysregulation, right? Like we're like nervous about it, right? I have this, I have that, I'm overwhelmed, and I have this kid, and I have that kid, and I have to do that, and I have to do that, okay? But where is it coming from? There's no centeredness yet, in my experience, okay? So what I've learned is that if I'm really, really overwhelmed, then I'll sit for even longer. I'll tell you why. Because when we make the time to create space for ourselves and the silence, and any kind of practice that we could do to get a little bit quiet inside, that gives us more time. It gives us more space. Somehow things actually work out better, and you're also in a place, an energetic place of experiencing your life in an easier way. Okay? So for example, and also sometimes you could have, if you decide that you want to try this, have a pen and paper right next to you. There's no rules here. The rule stuff doesn't work with me. Like I'm not a rule, like it doesn't work, right? So like I can't sit there and imagine something and then disappear something or any of that stuff. I just allow everything to come up. So part of what's going to come up are the grocery lists. They're going to come up. So we can either do one of two things. You could just be like, okay, grocery list, I have to do that today. I didn't do it. Okay, so then just do your grocery list and then just come back. Okay? If you wanted to, if this is sounding interesting for you, then that's how I would coach you to do that. Okay? All right. And then I would just offer that when you're sitting in the silence, that's exactly what's going to happen. Remember we talked about we don't feel so safe to be in our bodies, right? That's because our minds are going 1,000,000 miles an hour. That's exactly why the silence is helpful. Is we just allow whatever it is that needs to come up, whatever the thoughts are, they're coming up anyway. So when we're sitting in the silence, they just come up and then they leave. Okay? The grocery list, that's easy.
Which door do you open for them to leave?
So you just
Allowing
nothing.
them to
Just allowing it.
surface
Yeah, just allow it. And you become the watcher of your thoughts.
and not fighting it.
Exactly.
I
Just-
think
just
I
let them go.
get it. Just like a personal example. I do have a lot of stuff I do. I think some of you know that. And my work is like full time job, almost 24/7. I can guarantee you there's a bunch of WhatsApps as soon as I'm done this. And yesterday I had somebody come in and give a workshop by 11:45 because it's about she was always out to be in the small hall. And she was ready 11:35, and I feel myself like just tensing up, and all of the providers, because I oversee the providers, like the therapists there, and they're all raising hands, and there's a lot of questions, and I was getting more and more nervous, and like I know it's internal, it's just that I have to get on to the next thing, and like I knew already at that point, like it's funny when one of the providers messaged me, don't be nervous, just take a deep breath. So I was like, but the truth is that like there was nothing I could do, like just let things go, just breathe in, sit with it, and allowing things to just unfold out there. It's almost like allowing Hashem, like it's really about Hashem, because everything He is guiding everything.
He's in charge.
So if I have true B'tachon and allow Him to kind of guide it, I don't need to carry all the burden on my shoulder. I don't need to be as nervous as I am. Just take it as it goes, little by little, and whatever happens, happens. But when we get nervous, we feel like we have to control everything all the time. It is, am I right?
You're exactly right. And not only that, like I'm even going to say, even the thing about falling in love with it, I had this coming up and this coming up, and I love that. Like that's not exactly what you're saying, but I'm saying that those are also tools to allow things to start.
The more you're gonna accept it,
exactly. That's all that is,
And,
and that's exactly right. You're in the present moment with Hashem. You're allowing it to unfold instead of you being a victim. And what are we talking about here, right? Good stuff that's happening. You're having stuff from a job come in, right? People are wanting your assistance and stuff, right? Yeah. So then you become more in flow. That's a beautiful example.
So what do you
Did you
suggest?
want to say something else?
It happens, and
Okay.
it's funny because I actually feel the tension. I
Yeah,
have a lot of tension here, and it's from all of that tension all the time.
that's right.
I'm not a yeller. I don't yell.
Yeah.
I'm calm,
Mhm.
but I carry the tension.
Yeah, exactly. Our bodies are always keeping the score. So when we could have some tools that can help us to move out of a fight or flight, which is exactly what you did. You moved into flow. You moved into exactly what you said. You're like, oh, then we're going with God. And that's exactly what it is. We want to be in flow with our creator, with God, right? We want to be in flow, not at the effect of our brain. That is like our default kind of brain that's just trying to protect us from bears that are not there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so what do you suggest? Every day, like how long? Every day to do it?
Okay, look, I started with an hour, but
An hour, that's a lot.
I-
The first time, especially.
you would think so, but let me just tell you,
Beginner.
an hour is really
An
good.
hour?
Okay,
What's
let me just
time?
tell you.
An hour.
Okay, so yeah,
So,
so
So you like
so what I really,
No, when
I'm
you
just telling you.
rest.
So what I do,
while you're doing it.
Yeah.
Something stretch, do and breathe.
What we supposed to do?
Breathe,
Stretching?
okay, so
Just sit down and relax.
yeah, so really what I do when I start working with my clients, and they're like, well, I don't have time, I can't do this, what's going on, what are you talking about? It's like, okay, we could start with 5 minutes. Okay, we can even start with 1 minute. Okay, you could literally put your phone on airplane mode for 1 minute, and that's the minute that you're just giving to your creator, right? Like that's it. It's like a surrender. It's like a letting go. Like I'm letting go of my life, what I think I need to do, what I think da 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 da. Now some of that stuff is going to come back. It's going to be completely fine. But some of that stuff, you might have some space in between it, and instead of coming from a place of fear, you're going to be coming from a more centered place. So there's going to be some space, and this is really what we're wanting. We want some space between our thoughts and our actions, okay? Because without the space, we actually believe our thoughts. We believe all of the stories that we tell ourselves, like this is happening, that, and the school was like this, and da 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 da, and all this stuff is like it's just kind of meant to. We feel in some way, because there's a lot of anxiousness, especially like in the Jewish community, and any like there's a lot, okay? There's a lot. It's like a lot of people have grown up with anxious. One parent is anxious, or one parent is the more dominating one, and the other one is more passive, and like our bodies are kind of used to being on that, okay? But like then there's really no room for Hashem, right? Then there's no room for alternative thoughts to come in. Okay, so what really we want to do is we want to kind of be able to be regulated, to have that kind of space, so when we are coming up, we are going to have life situations that sometimes feel that they're too big for us. And you know what? They are too big for us. There's no way I could get through the things that I get through. There's no way that people that are like, you can't get through the stories. You can't even make some of these stories up. You're not even that creative to make stories up of what people go through, okay? But that's because we're needing to reach out to a higher power. We're needing that, okay? So we want to be able to make space for that, so we could have this like energy flow, so we could have different thoughts coming into our consciousness. Does that answer your? So to try to answer a little bit more, it's like, because it's happening, whatever the circumstance is going on, it's happening anyway. Okay, like even if my kid's having a hard time, or she has a great time, or whatever it is, it's like it's already happening. So I could either fall in love with the hashgacha pratis of it, right, or I could be in resistance of it and say, I hate that this is happening. This is terrible. It's this person's fault. If only, or I could turn on myself, but that's not useful. It's only useful to keep us in the old story of being scared and a victim and all of that stuff. And it makes sense for us as kids growing up and having these survival tools. And I also want to say that when we're growing up and we have a parent or somebody say this to us, like they get upset or they get angry, as kids, we need to, as part of our survival, acquiesce to the parents in some way, okay? Meaning that we have to make up a story to make it that it's okay. So any kind of self-hatred that's turned inwards, it's only because we had a story about what was going on externally to make us safe. So if dad's mad, it must be my fault and I must be bad, okay? So if I'm bad, then somehow I feel comfortable, uncomfortably comfortable, okay? But that's like somehow doable for me, okay? Because I could do feeling bad, because that's the vibration You don't like that word, huh? It's the vibration. You're like, what's a vibration? What are you talking? Anyway, so that's the energy level that's in the house, and you could feel it. Like when you walk into a house, you feel if people are angry, right? Like you feel that. That's vibration. That's energy, right? You feel energy. And also, if you're going to a simcha, even if you didn't have the music, just the feel of the place, there's something of a higher vibration there. Okay, so that's vibration, and yeah, doing good. Okay. So I told you there was two things. So there's one is falling in love with it, right? So I gave you the example of, oh, I can't find my phone. I love that I can't find my phone. I love that. God, you know where my phone is. Can you just show me where my phone is? Because you totally know where it is. And then just let it go. Always. I found my phone. Okay? Like, it's not a problem. Okay? So it's there's some things that are very complicated. And so the things that I was talking about is like the really hard stuff, the hard feelings, right? Like, I love the fact that my dad was like a raging. Like, I love the fact that I was like this. Like, I love and I just want to tell you something. I've got to the point where I actually have fallen in love with my life so hard that I love my life story so much. Like, I wouldn't even change it. There were certain things that I would change, like just with me and my daughter, like of that, but it's like I can't. And I also can love that I can't, change that. But I could fall in love with it. And when we fall in love with the things that we hate,
accept, I mean,
it's the same. It's the same. I know. So that's, I'm using the word, yeah.
Imagery for
That's
me.
why I said it's very extreme.
Right.
So I'm going to give you another one. It's acceptance.
Right.
We are talking about acceptance.
Like, it's
I'm
okay
using
that I
the
can't
word
find. It's okay that I can't
100%.
find my phone.
Yeah.
I'll find it eventually. When I need it,
Right.
you'll show it to me.
Yeah.
That's what.
Yeah.
Right,
It's fine.
Yeah.
That's what,
But
So this is why, okay, fine. So I just want to say that there's layers, okay? There's
level.
acceptance. Right. There, it just is, yeah. And we could train ourselves. And there's another thing of, and that's okay, right? I can't find my phone and that's okay. There's certain things that we could kind of add on a caveat of, and that's okay, just to get us out of resistance.
But
Okay.
what about if you just ask Hashem to help you find the phone?
You could just ask Hashem to help you find the phone.
Yeah, he's not going to help you find the phone. Say it's okay.
What did you say?
If you say it's okay, then Hashem's not helping you to find the phone.
That's a
But
thought.
if you ask, please help me find the phone. Well,
Yeah. It's just the thought that if I do something a certain way, then God's not going to help
I
me.
say,
or-
I'm sure I'm going to find it. Like,
Awesome.
It's really
Yeah.
a matter of, like you said, it's accepting hashgacha pratis
Yeah.
unequivocally and equanimously.
Yeah.
That it's whatever is happening to me in this moment is from Hashem and it's for my good and it's good. So that's where the in love part,
And then
I
we
think,
can still wanna
really
find
Thank
is
you
a high
for
level
translating. Yeah.
of living with hashgacha pratis. And that is the ultimate form of regulation and being in alignment with Hashem's will for us.
In psychology, it's reverse psychology. It's reverse.
Yeah, it's a hack. That's interesting. It's
counterintuitive.
right.
Yeah.
It is counterintuitive, but it's really like applied chassidus. Because really, if we're believing what we're saying, then it's like, okay. But let me just tell you, there's some times that it's painful, right? That's why your brain's like, oh, I can't even think about being in love with this. Like, and I could love that you think that. Like, do you know what I'm saying? I could love everything. See, because there's a part where I could be like, oh, this is that. Like, we all have like all these thoughts all the time, right? So I can have all these thoughts of like, oh, maybe there's a thought, oh, this maybe not going so good. Somebody doesn't understand what I'm saying. Or I can just like love the fact that like you're not loving exactly, or like you're thinking or not understanding, right? So it's like, I love that. Like, we could literally love our brains. Only two people can come up to a fight. Okay, so people are like, oh, I've been in resistance with my brain. I've been fighting my brain. I'm like, why? Why? It's such a waste of energy, right? Like, we could just kind of just be like, we don't have to show up with a fight, okay? It's just like, it could just be okay. And it's not saying that we accept unacceptable behavior. I'm not saying to be in an abusive situation. That's not what I'm saying. But what we are saying is that something is happening in my life right now, and I'm either going to be in resistance to it or I'm going to be in flow with it. And the way that I talk to myself and the relationship that I'm creating with myself about whatever this is, that is what's going to help me to be in flow with my life. And when that happens, when we are in more of flow, that's when we have the ability to receive more answers. That's when something will, oh, and I just got an idea. Let's do that. Does that make sense? Like,
So we're not
You're
in
also
love
gonna
in
live.
painful situations. accepting it and love the fact that I can work on myself. This is an opportunity for me.
Yeah, to be really honest, I go into full on love, but
Love
sometimes
painful situations. Even watching the pain in your child is so normal.
I know.
That's so painful. I
Yeah.
love that they're
I'll tell you what I would do. I love the fact that your kid's going through a hard thing. Okay, there's so much to say about this, but okay, so there's one thing about thinking that your kids should not be going through a hard thing. Okay, that is in resistance to your life. Thinking that your children, I know that's not what you're saying, but I'm going to get there, but I just want to say that that is really something that comes up so much, is that we think that our kids should not be experiencing adversity. And, you know, if I was only different, I was married to a different person, if this happened, then they would just be fine. And that's just not, that's not where we are. Like, they're not supposed to not, if they were supposed to not ever face adversity, they would not be facing adversity. And that's it, right? So whenever time comes that, you know, Mashiach's going to be fully revealed through our power, right? Our contribution, and then also what's going to come from Hashem, whatever, it's all the same, right? Whenever that's going to come, when it's going to become ultimately the time of peace, then that's awesome, right? So I just, in order to get there, we have, like, it's like, so where do we really have the power and the flow in our life to actually make it less of a painful situation? So, so if our kid is in a situation that they're in pain, I know it's kind of a hard thought, like, oh, I love that they're in pain. So I guess, like, what I would just offer is, I love that I'm experiencing the pain of watching my kid go through pain because I care so much. You know, like, there's different ways to look at that, you know?
Can I give an example?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just, you're going to give an example, and then I'm just going to say there's also, I love the fact that this is adversity, and I also know that my child is fully capable of getting through this, and I need to be open to whatever I can do to assist in that, but not to try to fix, like, to take it away, right? Like, I love the fact that I know enough. I love the fact that I could sit in my own pain today and have this space, so that way when my child is in pain, I can be a space of love and compassion for that kid. Okay? Does that make sense? So I know that's like a lot of words. So really it's like, it's kind of like, you don't love, like, I don't love if somebody was mean to my kid, right? But I'm gonna love the fact of how I'm wanting to show up as a mom. Like, I love the fact that, I don't love that this is happening, but I also love the fact that I could be there for them while they are
So
in the
you're not
situation.
loving
The situation.
the pain, you find something to love in the situation.
Yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of, you know, whatever. This is what I want to offer to you. Is I'm throwing a lot of thoughts at you, okay? And the way we find our energetic center, I was talking about that a little bit. We're going to try on a lot of thoughts, okay? Whatever thoughts make you feel good, like you're going to feel in alignment. Like, there was some times when you're like, oh, I didn't like that, but then we said something and I was like, oh, I could deal with that. That means that thought is in alignment for you, okay? That's literally what that means. That's like our own body intelligence talking to us and saying yes. Okay. And when we're in pain and resistance, it's because that inner being in us is not in agreement with what we're thinking. So if we're thinking all this, like, negative stuff, you know, or whatever it is, like, and we're experiencing anxiety or pain, it's because our thoughts and our emotions are not in alignment. Okay. So you wanted to give an example of something? I'm sure it was good. Yeah, it's good. Okay. So I don't know what time did we look at either. So we're about an hour, but okay. So, and I just wanted to say, let's see, because I was like, I had all these points, and I'm like, I just want to make sure that I have all my points. So we just talked about our energetic center, moving from resistance into flow, connecting with the body's intelligence. That's actually how we connect to the body's intelligence. Is the sitting in the silence will actually force us to kind of meet ourselves. Okay, so that's why we want to kind of take it, if you want to take it in like little steps, we could do that. Sometimes looking at our thoughts. A lot of times what happens with, always this happens, is that we have a whole story, and it might be based on a lot of evidence about our kids or about our spouse or about anything, but since it's a parenting thing, our thoughts about our kids are just thoughts. It doesn't mean that they're true. It's just like our programming will make us look at the things that we don't want to see, or our projections. And then as time goes on, we start building up a lot of evidence, and sometimes the kids show us a lot of evidence of how everything you're thinking is true. Okay, so I guess what I just want to offer though is that we might want to, like, after we do our own, like, if we want to know what our operating system is, write down all your thoughts. Okay, if we want to know what we're operating on, just write down what you're thinking. If you're having a feeling that's upsetting you, go write down your thought. What that feeling that I have is connected to a thought that's in my brain. So I will sit there and this is like, this is a real exercise. Like, if you do this, your life will change, and you will move out of fight or flight. You will move out of you will move into more clarity of what is actually going on and what program you're running, right? So for example, whatever thought that you have is creating a feeling. And usually whatever thought that is, if you're feeling anxious because of the thought, then your program is anxiousness. Your program is scared. So that's like an old program. But when we could change that, when we feel, does anybody have an example? Like, I would love to do an example. I have like an example of stuff that I was thinking before this talk that was like really helpful because I like doing that. But if you have an example, we could do.
An example of what?
Like, just like of some thoughts, like anything, like a thought that is like.
So I have an example of a time where I had an amazing thought that just changed my
Okay.
mood, like instantaneously. Like I don't know what happened. I was frustrated. I came home and dinner wasn't made and none of the kids did anything to help and the kitchen was a mess and they're expecting dinner and I'm like, and first I have to wash the dishes, clear the sink, clean the counters, then I can start dinner. Like, hello, where was everybody when I wasn't in the house? So I'm sitting there like a victim, thinking I'm so frustrated and I'm washing the dishes and I'm so upset and I'm literally like, like my shoulders are like this and I'm like a miskana, like I'm so, like, poor me, I'm such a victim. And then suddenly this thought came into my head, like, and I said, you are not a victim. And I'm telling you, just one thought took me completely out of it. I became in such a good mood. It's hard to believe, and I'm not saying it happens all the time, but it happened. And it really happened. Like, I stopped being resentful. I stopped thinking about everybody else. I told myself I'm not a victim. I'm not a victim. Well, I'm a victim? Like somebody's beating me up, like, oh, poor me. Nobody thought about doing the dishes. Nobody thought about helping, You have older kids, you expect it, but it didn't happen, and it doesn't happen, so.
Yeah, and I love that. No, I'm just kidding. Anyways, I'm like, can you throw stuff at me? So much trouble.
But it was amazing.
Right.
Because I did think, what am I thinking? I did think that to myself. Like, I'm like, no, I'm not a victim. Like, it's really up to us. It really is. And I was so, and your kids, the whole household, it's like they pick up on you. On your, like she says, your energy. Like, if I'm like that, people don't want to be around me. You know what I'm saying? The minute I thought that and I really felt like such a mensch. I was happy. I'm not joking. I was happy. I finished the dishes. I made dinner. I didn't care. You eat or you don't eat. You like it, you don't like it, whatever. I'm happy. It worked. It was like, it wasn't like I
She
even
fell in
tried
love with
that
the
hard.
dishes,
It just
basically.
happened. What?
You fell in love with the dishes.
Yeah, I fell in love with myself. I was like, why not? Like, okay,
She said
nobody's
nobody's forcing me to do it. I want to do it. I'm doing it by my free will.
Exactly.
Right.
Like,
I choose to do it.
I could go to my room and sit in my room and drink wine. Like, I don't need to do the dishes and make dinner. Forget it. But I was choosing, right? So I'm going to be a victim.
But what if you don't have a choice? There are 6 kids in the house and you must take care of them. And you're so overwhelmed. You just like a fish, like, I don't know, that wants water. And you're just.
You have a choice of how you feel. Like, I'm not saying
Situation.
it's easy. I'm not, honestly,
Feel-
it's not like
yeah.
every day I have this. I'm like, oh wow, I'm such an expert. I know exactly what to think when I'm not feeling good.
Right. No, but this was a
It
good
was
example.
just an
Ross,
experience that I had.
I'm just so overwhelmed.
I'm gonna offer you.
I don't have.
Yeah, this is awesome. I'm gonna offer something to you because you're like, what if I don't have a choice? you think you don't have a choice, but you do actually. Just okay, I know, but let's just say we do have a choice.
Oh, there's always a choice.
Okay.
It's just not a responsible choice. Not
Okay,
not
so
a
but
choice
but we lose our sense of agency. I don't have a choice. Then we become a victim to our kids. We become a victim to dinner. We become a victim to our life. And I know you're overwhelmed, but I'm just saying it's not a choice that you want. So we're like in resistance. It could also be that you might be able to choose. I just don't want to make dinner right now. I'm going to do it because I'm not interested in having 6 kids starving right now. Do you see? It's just the way that we phrase things is either going to be in a disempowering way where we become a victim to our life, or because you just said, oh, but I always have a choice. But you started with, what if you don't have a choice?
No, there's always a choice. You can always jump off the cliff. And there's
Yeah,
but that's not that's
Right.
not within our normal choices.
So, but own that and say it's because I have some choices. I don't have to do this. If I don't want to go to work, I don't have to go to work. Okay, but I'm choosing to go to work because I'm not willing to take the consequence of not going to work. I'm not willing to take the consequence of not getting paid. Okay, if I'm not making dinner, then yeah, I could make dinner, or I could decide to not make dinner, but I'm not willing to take the consequence of not making dinner and having to deal with. I don't have to deal with 6 kids, but in other words, it's the way that you're phrasing it. So it's like, because the first thing you said was, what if you don't have a choice? Okay. And when we just open this up a little bit more, you're even saying, well, I always have a choice, right?
Theoretical. There's
Yeah.
there's a theoretical choice, but there's no.
It's just not the responsible thing to do.
Right.
Yeah,
So
because-
then
Can
it's
I-
how you think about that.
You know what, I
So
got
if I
an
don't
answer
focus,
from the Rebbe
that
ones
yeah,
from the
because
Igros
just
that I
about
was
think
really
about it.
struggling, and I was thinking about all my issues and problems, and this is like many years ago, and the answer was so amazing because the Rebbe didn't say like, you know, it's like what she's talking about, beat yourself up, slap yourself up, like, well, what are you doing? Like, come on, trough good, design good, like, you know, like, what's wrong with you? But the Rebbe said, in the answer was amazing. He said your inner and external obstacles are real, but he said, but you must free yourself from these shackles. Like, they're real. I acknowledge they exist, but they don't have to be like, you don't have to
You don't have to drag you
you know,
down.
a shackle with you everywhere because they exist. You know, like it's almost like okay, you know, it doesn't have to like. I don't know. To me, it just kind of strengthened my bitachon a little bit. Like wow, you know, like because I was thinking I can't if I live in this small apartment with no room and I can't buy my kids bikes. This was like when they were younger. And I don't have anywhere to put anything. I have to move 5 things out of the way to get one thing. You know, like, I can't live like this. I can't do anything because this is too hard and stifling for me. So the Rebbe was saying, you're right. You know, you have these obstacles, but don't let it put you in jail. What do you mean you can't do anything? Like, you can still do. You can still, I don't know how to, but it just uplifted me, the answer. You know, you must free yourself from these shackles, even though, yeah, it's real. It's real. It
It
exists.
doesn't have to pull you
Limitations,
down.
like
Yeah.
certain limitations.
You know, if it's still on some level, there could be a positive aspect to it, and you have to really look in a certain way for what is uplifting you instead of making it pull you down.
Right, instead of
There's really
fetching
just
about
different
everything,
perspectives of how to
you know,
look at everything.
like you realize, like for me, it made me think like Hashem knows exactly what I need and He's going to give it to me. I don't know when or how or whatever, but it's going to happen, you know? I mean, I'm sorry, I don't mean to preach.
I'm not-
I'm not saying like,
What if the choice isn't make supper or not make supper? What if there's something else that's the choice?
Mhm.
Whether I could be angry and make supper, or I could be more whatever and make supper. Or maybe if I'm very overwhelmed right now, I gotta make supper because I need to, because I don't have a choice. But I do have a choice to go to my room for 5 minutes. I do have a choice to go get a drink and take a deep breath in my room for 5 minutes and come make supper. There's like so many other things that you could move into the flow, right? You could be angry and say, I don't want to, like that's what you're saying, it's like the resistance, right? I'm angry, I'm overwhelmed, I don't want to make supper, I don't want to be here, I don't want to be doing this. I know, I've been there, right? We all have those moments. Those moments are not going to run away. We still have the little kids, and we still have to make supper, right? But then, like, what if we just have to, like, shift out of that, right? I'm still going to make supper. I'm either going to be really angry when I make it and yell at the kids while I make it and then burn it while I make it, a million examples, right? Or supper, right? Or make sandwiches for supper. The goal is that the kids need to be fed. The goal isn't that I have to be this amazing mom. You're still an amazing mom anyway, right? But the goal, if you manage to figure it out, then also, right? You know what I'm saying? Also, I find when we take care of ourselves much more, when we're taking care of ourselves, we lessen those moments of overwhelm. That's where I'm at. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? Okay, so this is the thing. Yeah, she doesn't want to hear. I don't want to hear. I asked, but okay.
Yeah, just
Anyways,
if you don't
yeah.
have that much more time, I'm wondering also if we could cover like just a bit about the actual like energy healing, the quantum, like what is
Okay, we could talk about cool about all this, the modalities. Okay, cool. Yeah. So just all right. So I just want to tie up the whole idea of becoming our own superhero. We could literally just decide how we want to respond, even though we don't think that we have. So like what you just said was exactly on point. So okay, so this is so energy healing, and basically we are all energy. Okay, so what happens is that there's trauma and there's stress, and there's also sometimes people have pain. Okay, so that's all a lower vibration. Okay, actually, a lot of times, or most of the time, our thoughts that are creating the pain, right? Our thoughts that are creating the overwhelm, our resistance to our life, what ends up happening is that our bodies end up keeping the score for that. You explained a beautiful example of how it ends up manifesting itself right in our shoulders, okay? People have back pain, sometimes it turns into other things that are actually more dangerous, okay? Or more serious, I'll say, okay? Yeah, so there's that, okay? So what is happening in our bodies is that we're getting off center and off alignment, and what's happening is our bodies are always there for our health. Like our bodies are always going to find our health. So if we're in a situation where we're experiencing a lot of the emotions and we're not allowing ourselves to either sit through them, to love ourselves through them, and to be compassionate with the emotion and allow it to just pass through us, what's happening is the body is holding an energetic space in our body. Like basically it's, if this is like our midline or something, like what'll happen is like our body, a lot of times you'll feel it in your gut. You ever like get really nervous if something's happening and you feel it in your gut? So basically what's happening is the body is trying to, is physically finding a way to support you, but it's going to put you in out of alignment. Okay. So you're going to survive whatever it is, but you're going to be out of alignment. And that's why I think like it's so important. It's just not like, that's what Nechama was saying. It's not just like one thing. It's the body, mind, and the soul. Like it's all three things because they're all in alignment. So when what's basically happening then is it's not just that you're regurgitating patterns of behavior that you did as a child in survival mode and in your life now. It's also like there's places in your body that are not free because you've like clamped up or something happened. So you don't actually like in your body have the freedom to move or to have, like we want to have the most, to have flow in our life, to have energy in our life, right? We want to be in flow. So when there is trauma, stress, or pain, that stops the flow. So what energy healing has done is basically so I do quantum touch, which basically I'm moving energy through my body out through my hands. And so that's creating a high vibrational field. You know how we were talking about before when you go to like a wedding or something, like that's a high vibration, or if somebody's in the hospital, you feel the hospital is a lower vibration. It's the same thing in the body. When there's stress, pain, and trauma or whatever, it's a lower vibration. Okay. So what's happening is when you're putting energy in basically the higher vibrational energy is being placed in the client. So I do a lot of work with clients one-on-one, in person, but also in Canada, Australia, Israel, Florida, California, in Brooklyn and Crown Heights. We're just not in the same location. And wherever wherever my thoughts go, that's where the energy flows. And this sounds like really like out there, but it's really, really powerful because that's actually how powerful our minds are. Okay.
What's the difference with emotion code, let's say?
Okay, so emotion code, I didn't study emotion code, but I've actually been listening to the audiobook on it a little bit just to understand it, but it's kind of like very similar. And I just want to say all of these modalities are going to be similar because the basis of them are all going to be about kind of being with whatever it is and then allowing it to release. Okay, so with energy healing, the higher vibrational energy is going into the body, and the body is going to eat it like energy food. It's going to eat it up, thereby raising its own vibration, thereby healing itself. We're always our own healer, okay? But the practitioners are here to facilitate your healing, okay? Whether it's coaching, whether it's energy healing, whether it's craniosacral, whether it's emotion code, or whatever it is. What I would just offer you is that whatever it is that speaks to you, that is what's going to work for you. Like that is the thing that you do, okay? So energy healing is amazing. Really cool examples is one example that I was just thinking of is I have a friend, she has like 13 kids, and she used to walk to keep her weight down. That's what she wanted, okay? But at some point she couldn't walk anymore. Like there was something in her heel. She had such a bad pain in her heel that she wasn't able to walk, so she had to like go swimming instead. So she liked swimming, but I just said let's do a session. So we did a session on her heel. Nothing. Sometimes also like energy, like it could happen immediately where you see the changes, and also sometimes it needs some time to like integrate into the system. So 2 weeks later, we end up getting on the phone, and she's like, the pain is completely gone. Okay. She called me back. I think it was like a day later, and it was her son's wedding that night. And she said, the pain jumped into my arm, and she physically could not move her arm. So the pain jumped from her heel into her arm, and she couldn't move, and it was her son's wedding. So I said, fine, we're going to do a session. So we just did a session, and this was remote work too. And stuff came up about her mom, okay? There was some stuff. And once we worked through that emotional stuff that was going on with mom, at the end of the session, it was completely gone, the pain, and she was able to move her hands. I went to the wedding. It was amazing. And you would never know that there was even an issue. So that's just an example.
I have a question. So how do you know when to go to therapy to manifest like this kind of stuff? And there's so much out there. How do you know which one is the...
Okay, so it's a really good question. The question is, how do you know which one? There's so many things. So it's kind of like whatever is speaking to you, that's what you do. That is my experience. Like I've done a lot of stuff, right? Like I started with therapy. I'm not going to go now into talk therapy, but it's not that it didn't help me. It moved something in me that got me to the next stage. And it's just understand that this is like, it's a process. Like even sitting here and listening to this shifts energy, right? You get a new idea, you get your energy shifted. Okay. So my rule of thumb is that if it is something that I feel a lift inside, then I know that that's something that I want to do. Okay. And then another rule that I have is that if it's working, I keep doing that. Okay. So there's, cranio, and so with the cranio, so this is the difference. Did that answer your question? Yeah. Okay. So, you're welcome. So basically with energy healing and with cranio, so one, the energy healing is that we're putting energy into your body. Okay. So it's a high vibrational energy, and it's really, really effective, especially when I'm like working with clients and we're talking about all this cognitive stuff. The reason why this has been so effective is because there's stuck energy in regards to that. So you could be in therapy. I've literally had people like crying because they've been in therapy and on meds and all this stuff, which is amazing, but all this stuff for like 30 years and they haven't had any breakthroughs or any transformation. And like working together for like 3 months, their life has completely changed. Why? Because we're working on a different energetic frequency. We need to flush out the energy that is not serving us, like the energy that is stuck, that energy that I was explaining before, like when we're feeling pain or something happens or we feel trauma and we feel it in our gut and we feel it in here and we feel it in the shoulders. So we're working with older energy. Like I actually feel like a completely different person than I was 10 years ago. Like our energy just we change, you know, every day, like every second actually our cells are like regenerating. So now we just give ourselves the gift of energy, so it's moving it out. So sometimes I could work with somebody and we'll be talking and we work through stuff, right? We do some thought work, we do some you know, alignment stuff, and then it's like, okay, now let's just do some energy work. And we actually, you know, if it's a heart thing, right, I need some healing in my heart, okay, so we work on the heart. So now it's every single cognitive idea that we just talked about that felt right, now it gets placed energetically. It's allowed to, the energy in us that was blocking us to have the freedom that we needed or to have the healing, it's basically allowed to absorb into our bodies, so that way our bodies become more of a support, so we could actually like be more in our bodies. And also to the point about sitting in silence, is the more that we heal our bodies and the more that we do the body work in addition to the cognitive work, the longer you could actually sit in silence. Like, it does help. All I just want to say is all these things work together and they all help. You have an emotion, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it does not very much mean that it depends on the provider. If it's all about the provider's energy passing on, then it makes a difference who the provider is.
Okay, yes and no. Okay, so so the question is, does it make a difference who the provider is when you're doing the healing? So
you're saying that's their flow of energy going to you. So what if they don't have a good flow, or they're not in a good space?
if I don't feel like somebody is, that's why we have to like trust ourselves. So there's two things. Sometimes there's people that will come to me and they'll say, nothing has ever worked for me. No talking, no this, I've done that. And they have 100 things that just have never worked for them. And I say, great, I'm also not going to work for you. Okay. So because they're already in, it's never going to work for me. Nothing is already helping. So I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in, these are the things. Sometimes this stuff works, but you know, like what I found is this is why I want to do this. It's like, if nothing is ever working, that's an attitude shift. You know what I mean? Why do we keep on going to people that it's like, because we want to keep doing that and to keep, so that's what I'm saying, like our own personal responsibility, which I don't think is what you're getting at, but I just wanted to say that because it is like part of our responsibility is to being open to that. Even when I have gone to a therapist that has not been the best situation possible, or that, and I've had situations where it's been hurtful actually, right? Like some people are humans, like practitioners are humans, but I've also learned from that and I've also benefited from that. So no matter what, I've still benefited from it in some way. Okay, so that's one thing. But the second thing is that's why I always tell people to trust their intuition. And especially like for me, like I really will only go with people that, and I learned this from craniosacral, that because I work with the two with, you know, Chaya Chev and Rachalea. So when I started to work with them, then sometimes like somebody else would pop up, they did a cranio thing, and then I went to him, and then it was like no. And so what I realized is by going to different people, my lesson for that is that I always like to go on a recommendation, you know, like I always like to know somebody that went there, unless I'm hearing their energy, I'm listening to them, and I'm like jiving with everything that person is saying. So I am energetically, like, meaning intuitively, right? Intuitively, I'm like, that person can help me. So is it possible that a practitioner can have an off day? Yeah. So you have to then talk about it, and then you are the one who gets to decide if you want to continue. You're welcome. Thanks for coming. I don't know. What time is it? Is it like, okay, that's the right time, right? Okay, fine. All right, so is that helpful? What?
Like just so difficult.
What did you say?
Teenagers are not really on board with getting themselves help.
Some are.
Personal responsibility.
Yeah. That's the problem with
some
teenagers,
might
isn't it?
be. It's not.
What?
No, I'm just saying.
And we love it.
It's a.
And we love it. Look at how he said we love it, and you laugh. Now you have a better life experience.
I love my teenagers.
Yeah.
I learned to love all their things.
Yes. Hello. That's exactly what I'm saying. Like we get to love all this shtick and all this stuff. It becomes like
No,
fun.
I love all the
I
shit
know.
for my teenagers.
Yeah.
It's my parents on the other hand.
Yeah. Okay. So that's like another talk here, but yeah, exactly.
So the real question is, you know, it's one thing when somebody's invested or feels that they personally can benefit, but a resistant teen.
Okay, so this is what I want to say about resistant teens, that we just want to fix them, okay? We just want them, because we don't want to be, why do you want talk to me a little bit more about resistant teens.
Resistant teen.
Say it again. Yeah.
They have an attitude.
So yeah. Yeah.
And she doesn't.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So thanks so much. So the thing is, why do you need something to work for her? Why?
Because she's in pain.
Yeah. Okay. So, and then if she's not in pain, and what do you experience when she's in pain?
I experience her pain.
Right. Well, you don't experience her pain.
Without her
You experience your pain, and she's triggering your pain. Right. Right. So when we really, really, really get down to it, and I know it's not saying that we don't want our kids to have the best lives, but really, it gets really uncomfortable for us when our kids are in pain because it brings up feelings that we don't want to have. Okay. And that's why we want them to be fixed. Like, that's why we want them to be better. The best thing that we can do in that case, we can't, because we can't change them, right? So whatever, there's a dynamic going on between you and your teenager with that dynamic, because sometimes it's even possible that is it ever possible that like they're like that, but specifically just with you? Like, it's amazing to me sometimes when I'm around other people and they tell me all these amazing things and I'm like, oh really? Because with me, it's a little different, right? So, but the thing is more, as I've shifted, then I also see that.
I'm not sure. Because
She might really, really be in pain, and there are some really serious things. So the thing is, it's how this is about becoming our own superheroes so we could be that for our kids, okay? So, of course, we want our kids to not be in pain, but the thing is, it's the reason why is because they're bringing up stuff in us that needs to heal. So the more that we can get in flow with the fact that there's some facts here. The fact is, and we'd have to the fact that she's in pain is also a thought. And it's not that it's not real, but it's also a thought, okay? There's a circumstance that's happening that's a fact, right? So I don't know what that is, but there's certain factual things that are happening, and then we're having the thought that she's in pain. She might even say she's in pain, or maybe she's in bed the whole day, or something like that, right? So, but the thing is, as mom, is while my kid is in pain, how do I want to show up? Okay, because sometimes what happens is, and this is exactly what happens, is that's why we have to get onto our own minds. And that's why I was talking about kind of healing our own self so that when we can become more available for when our kids will inevitably be experiencing pain. Okay, so it's just a matter of it's the patterns, I can't, it's really hard for my daughter, or it's really hard for anybody to be so negative all the time when I'm not fighting it. Do you know what I mean? So it's really about how do I want to be experiencing my life when there are challenges that are really, really painful. And we're not saying some things are supposed to be painful. Okay, so the way that I offer that is is first of all, where's the compassion for yourself? It's really hard to be experiencing your kid in pain. I'm really sorry. I'm so sorry that this is not working out exactly like you thought it was going to be, right? That the things, the way that you thought that life was going to be and what she was going to be experiencing is not working out that way. There's grief that we have to kind of get in touch with there.
I accept
Yeah.
all of that, and she feels
Yeah.
it. She feels it,
Yeah.
so she does feel better.
Yeah.
But at the same time, when she says, "I feel so anxious," it
Yes.
hurts physically.
Yes.
She feels
Yeah.
the physical.
And what do you do to respond to that?
So
By the way, physically, I feel like you clamp a little bit. You do, right?
See,
Yeah, it's okay, but I feel it. I feel that you do, and that's okay.
Even
That's
I
like
was
exactly,
her
yeah,
story.
exactly. But that's exactly why we do this work, because that's what's happening. Your daughter's experiencing an emotion. She's telling you, I'm in pain, but your body just wanted to fight or flight, and it's trying to protect itself because it doesn't know what to do. I don't know what to do. My kid is in pain. I don't know what to do. Okay. The first thing is that it's really, really hard to be experiencing pain. Now, sometimes this is the moment, but I would tell you to do this when you're not around her, right? It's really hard. My daughter's in pain and she tells me, and that brings up a lot of really hard emotions. So I have to be able to sit with that and fall in love with it or be okay with it. This is kind of maybe answering some of those questions about that's how we get okay with it. This is really, really painful. and I hear that, and I'm sorry, and I love you. Like, I love you. The fact that you're going through that. It's like we need to become the parents for ourselves
I love you.
that we.
So not me, it's
Yeah,
like-
yeah, yeah. It's like I love you. I love you, meaning me, and that's really hard. I really love you. You're in a lot of pain. You're really scared, and I'm here for you, and I love you. Okay, that is literally will change the game. When we start talking to ourselves like we're our own parents, it literally changes the game. So that way we could become a little bit more available. So imagine that it was not a problem that she's in pain, right? Probably whatever's going on in her life, it probably makes sense that she's in a lot of pain, okay? So as mom, the best way that I can help this kid, right, is to somehow be okay with me feeling the pain. Like, it's hard, right? I'm going to feel some pain when she's feeling pain. But just imagine the dialogue that could happen when you're acknowledging, yeah, it's really, really hard to feel all those emotions. It's really hard to be in pain. I hear you. And because you're able to sit with yourself in your pain, that's when you can empathize. And that's when we become a vessel of healing for our kids. Because now they can come to us and they tell us, yeah, I'm in pain. We're like, okay, this is part of the 50% that's gonna really be hard in our life, okay? But this is how I'm gonna show up. It's like, yeah. And then it's like, yeah, wow, that is really, really hard. That sounds really, really, really painful. Okay? So that's the difference. The same thing, same circumstances happening. One is we're afraid of it and we're afraid of ourselves and our feelings that we have, okay? And then the other one is we've moved through that and we're a space of love. We're a space of compassion. We're the space where love and pain are converging, and that is compassion. So now I could be a space of compassion, which is opening up energy flow. See, even as I'm talking, I'm open, right? My heart center is open. That's the opposite of this. That's the opposite of we take it in the stomach. It's like our kid is in pain and it's like we feel like we just got sucker punched. Because we did, right? But then we have to like love that. We have to like somehow be okay with that. Somehow it's like looking at the part of our bodies and being like, wow, that's really, really painful. Okay, stomach, thank you. Yeah, I feel you. I feel you. I hear you. I hear you. It's painful. Our kid is in pain. Yeah, this is really not going to feel good. It's going to be really upsetting when I'm going to be sitting with my kid and she's going to be in a lot of pain. Okay, now we're here. Kid is in pain. I hear you. That's really, really hard. Is that helpful? Okay, awesome.
Do you heal remotely a teenager?
Yeah, I knew that this was going to come up. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, it could. But okay, so the question is, can we do healing where?
Because I've heard people say, "Oh,
Yeah.
this is what I did for my son," and
Yeah.
is that
I do
a
believe that
real
it is
thing?
possible. I really do believe that once, because I did have the question, I didn't know the whole entire situation, but usually when a mom comes to me and says, I can't, can you, my teenager, this and that, I'm like, okay, well, first let's work on the mom. Like I always try to do that because our healing power for our family, when we heal front, we heal future, we heal past. And those two things don't even exist. But the healing moment, when we're actually doing the healing on ourselves, like we do heal our children and then we become the source of healing. And as we're opening up to healing, we're changing the way we're showing up with our kids. We're changing the pattern. It's naturally going to change. We can't keep coming from the same exact place that we were coming from before. We need to change as humans. Like I have to become the mother that I always wanted. I have to become that human. I have to become the human that's not scared that my teenager is going through this stuff. Okay. So there's different schools of thought on this. I have learned that it's okay. Like I could do energy work on somebody as long as it's an immediate family member, especially if it's a child, without their consent. But for long-term effectiveness, I don't know, like we want them to want it.
And
And
they have to realign themselves all the time too. They have to be aware to do that, no?
yeah, so usually like if it's a physical thing. So for example, in Florida, I worked in a dog. Well, I worked in a dog. It had a growth, okay? And I think it was, it was like, I don't know. It had something. It wasn't good. It was a growth. And the dog's not conscious of what I'm doing, but I'm working on him. I did half sessions on him, like 9 sessions in a row, and then we skipped and then we did another 9 sessions, okay? The growth disappeared, okay? So that's amazing, right? So that's like a physical thing. But like when we're, so yes, is it possible that we could work on people and we could help their energetically? It could be helpful. Okay. Like when I personally work on somebody, it would be better if they were sleeping, or because it's like when somebody's moving around, it's harder because they're more resistant to energy. So it just depends. Sometimes
So what are you doing tomorrow?
I'll try. Yeah. So we can talk. Yeah.
Does this heal trauma too?
Yeah.
This
This is exactly, yeah. So I just gave a physical example because the dog is just like not aware of it. So like, in other words, what I'm saying is like energy is going to work no matter what. Okay. But it is a matter of like what we're going to do with it. So yeah, that's exactly what it heals is trauma. Like everything, even that I was talking about this whole time, even pain, even sickness, that is actually trauma. Okay. But we don't have to have the sickness. We could just have the trauma, or we could have the stress in our shoulders, or we could have it in our back before it actually turns into something, right? And it's a trauma response. So yeah, like I've had even people on the table, like actually like when we're crying and like allowing that part, like if I have hands on, so just for one thing, it's like for cranial work, the difference is energy is putting the energy in, but cranial is actually working with the energy within you, okay?
So something like Lyme brought to now, like could you realign sicknesses that way?
So the practitioner can I could always put the energy in there and have the intention that this gets healed, right? So I just don't know how many sessions it would take. Does that make sense? And if somebody is, there's certain things that are like, like if it's like I don't know, you just said Lyme something. So yes, like energy work can help with all of these things. Like I would just be more comfortable with the person. Like if they have Lyme, or like if they have that issue, like they need to be on board. You know what I mean? With it, because we need to like kind of like work with it. It did. Yes. Yeah. And because that's like a physical tumor that like disappeared. I don't know exactly what all the specifications of that are, but I do know energy work was actually, I found it. And I know like my teacher also, like he said, he actually worked on somebody with breast cancer, and like he felt part of it disappear, because like sickness cannot live in a high vibrational space. So like when there's so much health, that's why when there's so many miracles with people, recovering from Yannamapha, when they've like just completely flush themselves with different vegetables and fruits all the time, right? Because that's like higher vibrational stuff, and then there's healing work that goes along with it to like heal ourselves emotionally. So that's why like we want the people to be on board with what we're doing, because could be an emotional component to it as well, to help facilitate the healing in addition to the energy healing. Like we are our own healer. Like even though yes, it happened on a dog, that just is like, I love that, because people are like, oh well, you have to like believe in it in order for it to work. That's an example of you don't actually have to believe in it, but at the same time when you're trying to heal something,
an emotionally mature faith to some extent.
yes and no. If it's a real child, then like, yeah, I mean, like if it's a kid, then they're not going to, but it's like, if they're resisting it, then I'm not going to force them. You know what I mean? So it's like, I don't know if that's like answering your question, but yeah, there's certain people that will just, yeah, like you just do.
It's not emotionally
Yeah.
mature.
Is there any release
You have to be able to be,
Oh, sorry.
I'm assuming you have to be more, be able to turn inwards and check in and be willing to do that.
If it's just energy work, there's times where you could if you're just even willing to accept the energy, like your body will do the work. Okay. So if it's a teen and they're open to it, it's going to help them no matter what, because if they're willing to just even sit there through the session, it could be helpful. So does that make sense? But like Dr. Joe Dispenza is talking about, like, you are the placebo. Like we are our own healer. Okay. So the energy will just help facilitate any of that healing. So, and it depends like how often you get the energy and, like whatever is working. So every case is individual.
Can I give a testimonial, since like I just
Okay,
want
I
to,
know.
I don't mean to like, but it's true. I was going to like a talk therapist for like maybe 4 or 5 months, and then I heard about what that Barrett is. I've known Barrett, but someone was saying Barrett is good, can you take all this? So I'm gonna try it. So I went to her after 2 sessions with her. I was already like, I got so much more out of it than I did from that the other lady. She was very nice. I got like tips and things, but I said I dropped her. I felt bad, but I was like, I don't feel like I need her. this is like this for me, it was so much more effective. Like it just was, and I haven't regretted it since then. When was it? Like a year and a half ago?
Yeah.
And it's not, I never regretted that decision. It's not like, I mean, you can always do whatever you want. You can go back, but I never felt like I had to. Like,
Sure. I mean, people, when you come in, it's stressed, and when you leave, you're just like,
But,
flowing.
You're right, but I'm saying, like, I've done emotion code sessions with
Yeah.
one of my kids, and the practitioner told me after, like, there might be, within the next 24 to 48 hours, release of emotions. They might be showing, like, crying, overwhelmed, hyper, whatever it is, like, there might be, does that happen?
Yeah,
also
my
with-
experience has been that sometimes people can just feel like, sometimes,
I know you need to
yeah,
find
some
your
people
rest.
can, yeah, but I haven't had like experiences where it's like super, super emotional. Like sometimes people, they do have to integrate. Like sometimes they'll feel like, very few cases, I've had like, let's say like 1 out of like 20 or something will be like, they have like after the, like during the session it's okay, and then afterwards they have like something, I don't know, something happens, and then it's just like we just have to do a little bit more to like realign them a little bit more. Does that make sense? All right, I'm gonna hop off. I hope that if anybody on Facebook, if you've hung out for this long, has any questions, just PM me, and I will talk to you soon. Love you.
Is this